Okay, so here's where we left off in the video before, looking at lines like 100 through 120 of scene 3, mostly line 120, where he takes the poison and dies. And then we move on, though, right after that, the friar shows up, and quickly thereafter, Juliet wakes up from her sleep from the potion where everyone thinks she was dead. And that's where the friar, I think, makes a pretty important mistake. He sees the situation of Paris dead because Romeo killed him, followed by Romeo dead because he took the poison, and now Juliet freaking out because she's surrounded by two dead bodies when she woke up. And the friar, for whatever reason, when he hears some people showing up, he hears like the guards of the graveyard, and he says, "Yeah, I'm out. I dare no longer stay." So he ends up being scared for his own life. He doesn't want to be accused of being a grave robber, and he runs off. Now, to me, this is pretty weak, especially since Juliet is there now awake and she needs his help, but he's not there to stop her. And so Juliet, realizing that both Paris and Romeo are dead, grabs Romeo's dagger and then kills herself. So now all three of them are dead. Romeo's dead. Juliet's dead. That's kind of what we've been leading to the whole play. We found that out in the prologue, and we've been kind of asking the question, whose fault is it the whole time? And now it's finally happened. Romeo and Juliet are dead. Now, when everyone else shows up, like we said, the watchmen were coming by. They figured out something fishy was going on in the grave, and they call the prince. The prince shows up. He wants to know what we've been asking all along. Whose fault is this? Who did this to Romeo and Juliet, and also a little bit Paris? And he calls everybody. He gets an explanation from Mr. and Mrs. Capulet. Mr. and Mrs. Montague show up as well, and they give their answers. And ultimately, the prince decides um, that this is a terrible tragedy. That obviously this is very sad that these two people have died, and the prince basically blames the parents because the prince looks at the whole picture and he says, "Well, if the Montagues and the Capulets had just gotten along and had stopped fighting with each other, then it would have been okay for Romeo and Juliet to be in love. They probably would have told their parents. It would have been more of a public thing that their friends helped them with. And instead of having to sneak around and eventually like get in trouble uh, with Romeo getting banished, etc., that they probably would have been able to live a happy life with one another, right?" So ultimately, that's what he says. I'll read this last bit of the Princess. He says, "A glooming peace this morning with it brings. The sun for sorrow will not show his head. Go hence to have more talk of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned, some shall be punished. For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo." Now, what this really leads us to, going back to the beginning of the play, like we said, we knew that Romeo and Juliet were going to die the whole time. Shakespeare was telling us this so that we could avoid the mistakes made by the people in the play. The, uh, the prince basically blames the parents. We might blame other people. Next week, you're going to write an essay kind of detailing that. I'm going to walk you through understanding, depending on who you blame, you might learn a different lesson from this play. Depending on who you think is actually at fault for Romeo and Juliet dying, there might be a different reason why it was their fault, why they were to blame, and they made a different type of mistake. So we'd be learning something different from the play. Again, we'll look at that next week. Until then, study. Your test is going to be on Tuesday. I'm going to post some videos on Monday that are going to help you just review the content of the play before you write that essay. But for now, let me know if you have any questions at office hours, and have a good day.